Well, as Elle mentioned, among the many, many hats she's worn in her life, Elle's one of those people who's lived more lifetimes crammed into one than most of us. She was a documentary filmmaker. Uh, and so allow me to brag on her for a minute. She was a journalist, she was a TV reporter, a news anchor on several stations. She produced and hosted a fabulous PBS public affairs program. She interviewed politicians, writers, business people, movie stars. The films that she wrote and she produced were shown on PBS stations all over the place, and they won numerous awards. She documented history, sports, science, any topic. She hung out with astronauts. Now, for those films, she always worked with the same crew, and they traveled together all over the place as they were researching and collecting interviews and just going wherever their story took them. One particular film traced the lives of the Comanche people, the Native Americans who dominated vast areas of the southwestern U.S. and northern Mexico, and who resisted the encroachment of other tribes and the Spanish and later white Americans in the 19th century. Now, for hundreds of years, Comanches lived as nomads, moving seasonally throughout the Great Plains and Southwest. They traveled light, hunting and gathering wherever nature provided food. So, as Ellen was producing that film, one of her collaborators, as she mentioned, was Dale Robinson, who really did have this great wry sense of humor. And one day Dale reflected on the life of a Comanche in the 1800s. He said, water was a necessity. You had to find it every day. And it was a really good day if you could find food too. No one had time at the end of the day to look at their spouse and say, you just aren't meeting my needs anymore as a partner. Dale was stating something I frequently lose sight of, and I think we all do from time to time. Now, we're not in the position, most of us at least, of worrying too much about taking care of our basic survival. In fact, our lives are crowded with conveniences and luxuries and material objects that we can invest with a lot more significance than they really deserve. We can pour ridiculous amounts of energy and emotional weight into so much stuff that truly doesn't matter in the big scheme of things. We can get so caught up in our own needs and the indignities we think we've suffered that we forget that our most basic need is knowing each day where we're going to find water. And I don't mean water literally. Thankfully, we have access to that. What I mean is living in such a way that we're grounded with roots fed by something deep that nourishes and sustains us and that lets us flourish no matter what comes. Now, I'm a great example of not always living that way, let me tell you. I've found myself more than once getting way too frustrated when a movie I'm streaming suddenly stops in place and that annoying spinning wheel of death appears while the video buffers. It could be a real effort just to pull back and appreciate how ridiculous it is that I'm flaming mad while sitting on a comfortable couch in a climate-controlled room, munching on my favorite peanuts, and screaming at this device that isn't downloading millions of bits of data every second from a server located somewhere out in Nevada quite fast enough to please me. It's embarrassing. All that because I must desperately know if Tom Hanks is ever going to make it off that deserted island with his friend, the volleyball. Doesn't matter that I've already seen that movie 10 times. This is life or death. Or at least that's the way I'm behaving. I can also yell at my coffee maker for not filling up my cup in under 1 minute. Or what really gets my goat is when the traffic light turns green and the knucklehead in front of me is still sitting there for more than 2 whole seconds before moving through the intersection because they might slow down my progress to Trader Joe's, where I must get the kind of peanuts and the coffee that I like, or my whole life will be thrown completely off balance. I'm exaggerating, of course. Kind of. Now, the COVID pandemic has been horrible all around, but if there's been any positive to come out of it, It's the daily reminders of all the genuinely important things that I regularly used to take for granted. There have been truly significant losses, personally and in a communal way. The disruption of our ability just to be with other people in ways that feel normal has been huge, and it's taken a big toll. That may be starting to change, thankfully. But as we begin seeing a light at the end of the COVID tunnel, I keep telling myself that I never again want to take it as a given any chance that I have to go to church with other people, or sit in a crowded theater or a restaurant, or attend a concert or a ball game. I'm committed to savoring those experiences and to do my very best to be acutely aware of the gift of every moment and to feel supremely appreciative of the blessing of life itself. But it's easy enough to get sidetracked from that awareness. Several weeks ago, I helped with our roadside trash pickup over at the intersection of Highway 611 and Broad Street. We do this every spring and fall, and this time we had about 24 people show up, which was really great. But we were all outside, of course, all wearing face masks and very stylish orange vests to avoid being smashed by the cars whizzing past. And I stopped to chat with one of our members, both of us dragging big bags full of trash that people had tossed out of their cars. And we were talking about something to do with our church, with Salem. In that conversation, I found myself saying something to her that often comes out of my mouth in high-minded moments. I said, I think all of life, everything is spiritual. In other words, spirituality is not something that we do or that we make an appointment for, like, I'm going to go be spiritual now. No, it's ever present and it's all around us, and we should revel in that. We can be aware of and celebrate spirituality in other people, in a bird song, in a good meal, in a ray of sunshine, or in a child's laughter. In practically any moment, no matter what's happening, we can be alert and connect with God's Spirit and live in gratitude for that. But for whatever reason, when those words came from my lips that day, I had one of those moments of self-awareness that all too often I am not actually living as if what I just claimed was true. It was true enough in that particular moment, talking with that person I care about a lot, about something I care about a lot, but I'd also been thinking that very morning as I was picking up trash only moments before about all the dumb and irresponsible people who toss trash out of their cars. All kinds of normal things, like soda cans and fast food wrappers and all kinds of weird things I'm not going to mention, that made me worried about whoever was operating a motor vehicle at the time they tossed it. Thinking about all that stuff, cursing to myself about careless trash-throwing buffoons was not truly living as if I believed that everything is spiritual. Picking up trash instead of my energy being focused on gratitude for the good that we were all out there doing together, I was mostly wasting my energy being frustrated at all the inconsiderate people in the world who I would never meet. It was like wasting my energy being frustrated by how slow my coffee maker works, or being angry because my movie isn't streaming quite fast enough, or being miserable that I might arrive a whole 2 minutes later than I needed to at Trader Joe's to buy coffee and peanuts. Tragic. The things we think of as legitimate concerns, all the stuff we fret over and get frustrated about, they could vary a lot depending on the circumstances, but reminding myself that I claim to believe everything is spiritual immediately after getting all worked up about trash on the side of the road, well, I felt very inconsistent. Now, it's not that we don't have genuine things to be concerned about. Life can be stressful. There's a ton of injustice in the world. We still have a way to go before anyone can declare this pandemic is over. There's always some kind of trash littering our pathway. We all carry around emotional baggage. We would have just as soon have gotten lost at the airport. But still, what I was recognizing that morning at the side of the highway was how easy it is to lose sight of what I believe. If everything is spiritual, if I'm supposed to be able to find God's love and peace and wholeness in anything, then why don't I always feel that way? Why am I ever thrown off balance by little things, even if it's just for a moment, much less the big things? How can I reconnect and more consistently live like everything is spiritual? For me, it's an ongoing process. One reality I have to remind myself of every single day is that how we are doing, how we are feeling, is largely up to us. That when someone makes me mad, for instance, that person hasn't actually made me anything. My response may be to be mad, but ultimately that's my problem. It's not their fault I'm mad. If they cut me off in traffic or call me a big bozo to my face, I have the freedom of choice to respond in anger or not, by remembering that I'm a spiritual being and so are they. I think of it as a process of finding my ground, literally reminding myself that I am grounded in something deeper and more enduring and more basic than whatever is going on around me. And my ground is the simple reality that I'm a beloved child of God whose love is flowing through me. So everything is spiritual. It was about 2,500 years ago or more that the psalmist began writing down poems and songs collected from the sacred traditions of the Hebrews. Now, some were said to have been composed by King David himself. The very first psalm appears to set the tone for the whole collection. And what's wonderful about it is the metaphor of being grounded like a tree near a stream, of putting down deep roots that are always being fed by the waters of God's love. If you're like that tree, it says, you're being nourished day and night. You're alive in a reality stronger than anything going on around you. The roots may be hidden from plain sight, but that is what's keeping your spirit and your very self flourishing. And knowing that is to be aware that everything is spiritual. If I can only be alert to that, if I can feel that grounding, if I can remember what's flowing through my roots, it's pretty amazing how quickly any anger or frustration slips away. If I can pause just long enough to see the presence of God, the holiness in another person, if I can stop and remember that they are cared for and loved by God just as much as God cares about and loves me, that is incredibly liberating. I don't need to be angry or frustrated. And if I can stop for a moment to remember that not everything in my life must line up perfectly, and that life never guarantees me it will anyway, and that it's okay if my to-do list is left unfinished, and that I can forgive myself for messing up occasionally because I'm a work in progress. If I can remember that I'm a lot like a tree that's grounded and growing season by season, then I can be open to experience the spiritual within me and all around me. I can find that it's already present if I just pause long enough to pay attention. Now, that's sometimes a lot easier said than done, I know. And that's why it's a daily practice to remember and to feel that grounding. Because some days life presents us with circumstances we would much rather avoid, tough choices we have to navigate, and wrongs that must be righted, wounds that get reopened, and small annoyances that can conspire to knock us off balance. But if we remember that ultimately we are grounded near the stream of living water this day and every day, we can see life for what it always is, a fantastic gift just waiting for us to open. With God's love flowing through our roots and flowering through our outstretched arms, everything is spiritual, and life is what it is created for us to be. It is beautiful.